We'll shift gears a little bit because we've obviously, quarterback is the glamour position. We could talk about that for an entire episode, but maybe just looking at the draft as a whole here. We don't need to get super in depth with every single pick that they made or anything, but just knee-jerk reactions of your winners and losers. Were there any franchises you felt just knocked it out of the park with rounds 1 through 7 overall as their draft class, and then others who it's just what the hell were they thinking? Did they time out and Yahoo auto drafted for them or something? Like,
Yeah.
who were you impressed with the most? Let's start with the winners.
Yeah. So I won't go into, all of the picks from all the teams, but I have one team in particular that I want to go over their first four selections. So, anyways, the winners that I have, Atlanta Falcons, they improved their defense immensely with four of their picks, and they brought in a pretty good backup offensive lineman. They made a trade. They saw their guy there sitting at the late first round. They went and got him. It's going to cost them a pick next year. Yes, but if that's their guy, go get him. Arizona Cardinals, I thought, knocked it out of the park. I think they did a great job with their first two picks. They got tremendous value with Will Johnson in the second round. Was talked about being a top five draft pick, during the season. Um, the Philadelphia Eagles, they did pretty damn good, man. And I think I talked with you about it this weekend. They've been on cruise control in the draft over the last 3 years. They've done such a great job of bringing in hard-nosed players that fit exactly what they want to do, and they take what everyone else gives them. When a guy like Jihad Campbell falls down the draft board and he's sitting there at 32, or he's sitting there at 31 because they traded up, go take him.
Yeah.
Like, there might be a small injury risk there. Who cares? You got depth. That's what the depth is there for, to fill in when a guy gets hurt.
Yeah.
I mean,
To go from what the Philadelphia Eagles have had at linebacker for the
yeah.
last like 8 years to now like Bond, Dean, and Campbell.
And then
Like,
but you got two guys. You got Campbell and London from Georgia.
yeah, yeah.
So, you've
Well,
got
it's not a Philadelphia Eagles draft until we draft
but
a
also
Georgia
Georgia
Bulldog. So,
players.
yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like you're even drafting, two guys in the seventh round, like I was mentioning to you, 6'7", 325-pound right tackles. Who's
Big
going to be
boys, big,
who's
big
re-
boys.
who's retiring in the next 1 or 2 years? Lane Johnson.
Everyone along
Yeah,
our
like
offensive line.
they're going to be retiring, and Philadelphia has the best offensive line coach in the NFL. If anyone's going to develop these guys, they're going to develop them there. Because Jordan Mailata, seventh round pick. Look what he's doing now. Then another team that surprised because we talked about them already. Kind of not really doing their due diligence at the start of the draft, but I thought Tennessee did very, very well at filling in a lot of the holes on their roster, and they brought in some talented guys. Shout out especially to Canadian draft pick Alec Ayamanor from Stanford. Um, exactly what Tennessee needs. Big body receiver who can go up and high point the ball. Love that pick for them. So I thought Tennessee did a great job. The one team that I thought had the best draft, and it's not a surprise because of who the new head coach is, the New England Patriots, I thought hit a grand slam with their draft this year. Not only did they have, I think it was 11 picks total, so they got to bring in all of that young talent. I'm just going to rattle off the first four picks and tell me if tell me if their quarterback is going to be happy with this.
Yeah.
Okay. So Will Campbell is a first round pick. The guy is a fantastic left tackle. The first quote that he says is, "I'm willing to die for Drake May."
Yeah.
Like you cannot imagine a better fit for a guy coming in, to protect you than a Will Campbell. Second round
You
pick,
gotta love it when the only knock on him is, wow, his arms were a little bit shorter than we thought they might have been.
which is the biggest garbage statistic I've ever heard in my life because there's guys out there with 8 foot wingspans who get beat because they can't move their feet at all.
Yeah.
So
I
if
love
you,
that his NFL combine measurements and then his pro day measurement. Oh, my arms have grown a little bit. The tape measures are a little bit more friendly.
yeah, LSU tends to LSU. That's the SEC measurement for you though.
Yeah.
Um, But second round pick Travion Henderson, he's the most explosive running back in the draft outside of Ashton Genty. I mean, exactly what they needed in their backfield after getting like a plotting Ramondre Stevenson out there, like kind of a third down running back with Antonio Gibson. Like Henderson is the guy who gets drafted on his pass blocking. Like that's literally his best skill is his pass blocking. So when you see his explosiveness, you see his ability to catch the ball, you see his pass block. This guy's a third, like a three down back that you're getting in the second round. Third pick, Kyle Williams. We've been talking about Drake May needing weapons the entire time that he's been with New England. Kyle Williams actually put up phenomenal numbers at two schools, one of which was with Cam Ward at Washington State. Cam Ward raves about this guy. He's a great route runner. When he gets the ball in his hands, watch what he does with it. He's fantastic after the catch. There was a rookie receiver last year. I think his quarterback was pretty happy with the outcome. Lad McConkey and Justin Herbert. I see a lot of that synergy happening, this year coming up with a Kyle Williams and a Drake May. And then you get a guy who's going to compete at center and guard for you in the fourth round, Jared Wilson out of Georgia. The guy was a 3-year starter at Georgia. That's saying something. So just those four picks alone, you now get a starting left tackle, starting running back, starting slot receiver, and your eventual starting center. You tell me that Drake May's not going to play his ass off this year because this team is investing around him because they're saying, we're going to give you everything you need to be the type of quarterback that Tom Brady was for New England.
Yeah. No, he's going to be a very happy individual for sure. And, I also had them as one of my winners, so I won't go into too much detail there because really it was everything you just said there and more, right? Like, again, the later you get into the drafts here, once you're in rounds 5, 6, 7, like they're dart throws at that point where it's like, you know what? Maybe we hit on a hidden gem every other year type thing. But the Brock Purdy's of the world and whatnot are few and far between. So by and large, at that point of the draft, it's depth and it's practice squad players, or we just flat out release you at that point. So
Yeah.
it's very much what are you doing rounds 1 through 3? And if you can hit on someone in the fourth and maybe someone at the top of the fifth, then you know what? It's a home run of a draft, right? So they definitely addressed their biggest needs because anyone who watched the New England Patriots last season, and God bless you if you watched all 17 of their games because they were ugly at some points there.
Yeah.
Like you were kind of fearing for like, ooh, are we gonna see Drake May just like suffer like a bad concussion or a torn ACL or something? Because even when he wasn't getting sacked, people were in his face, knocking him to the ground, bumping him, making him feel their presence every single play. Like the amount of clean pockets he would have per game, you could count definitely on 2 hands and on some of them on one hand because he was under duress there. The one thing, and it has nothing to do with the draft though, but it brings up an interesting point though, is like, what are you doing with Ramondre there? Because you just finished handing him that contract extension. Like, it's going to be an expensive what kind of complimentary piece, but maybe the only thing I could kind of think of was like, is Vrabel kind of looking at that Detroit Lions model where it's like you need kind of two backs that doesn't matter what the situation is. Long gone are the days of like, all right, you're my goal line 1 yard, head first diver here, and you are doing everything else, right? Like I think maybe they're trying to build that doesn't matter whether player A or player B is out there. We're keeping you honest by not having the fact of like, okay, well, we know Antonio Gibson's out there, so it's either a bubble screen or he's not touching the ball. Like it's pretty easy when you get into some of those very skill specific players of I'm only a pass catcher, I'm only a goal line guy. So, but aside from that, like you said, nailed the draft absolutely.
Yeah. And to the Stevenson point, New England had the most cap space out of any team coming into this offseason. I think they had to give their money to somebody. And if they're willing to eat that cap hit for this season, that's a cut candidate at next year's, June 1st deadline there. So, you know, being able to have one or two bad contracts on your roster is not going to cripple you when you
No.
have over $120 million in cap space.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a team that can play around with the piggy bank a little bit more than some of the
Yeah.
other NFL franchises for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Again, I oscillate between giving them their props and just saying like, screw them, they're a division rival. I'm not going to recognize the New York Giants here, but I will put them in as an honorable mention. I won't say they were one of the winners of the draft, but they did a very ungiant-like thing, which is screw up the draft, which they have done for multiple seasons here. If you had have told even the most bitter, jaded Giants fan that you were going to get Jackson Dart and Abdul Carter in the first round, I think they would have been thrilled with that and not needing to give up like, a king's ransom in future draft capital in order to actually execute that. So I have to give them their flowers there. But the other one that you didn't mention that I do want to give their props to because they were, again, a team that could have very easily thrown in the towel and just been like, screw it, we're in the Arch Manning sweepstakes. Here we go, folks, was the Seattle Seahawks. And again, lots of picks because were one of those teams that had a ton of drafts picks in rounds 6, 7, all of that. 5 through 7, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They had 7 picks from round 5, pick 142 onwards. So they made their hay on day 3 for sure. But in rounds 1 through 3, they did address a few needs, and I think probably got one of, if not the steal of the draft based on what kind of their future of their franchise there is in getting Jalen Milroe out of Alabama to not need to be the guy, take a year, but he was someone that there was a lot of sneaky draft buzz about kind of leading
Mm,
up to it where it's like, oh, teams are falling in love with him. Oh, he's got the ability to take off and run, the most dynamic runner, dot 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 dot, right? Like all the things, whether that was smoke screens or not, and it's just sort of how it ultimately played out with the picks on draft day because we all know you can have a plan, and then once the picks start flying, it's oh crap, a run on tight ends just happened. Like I got to get mine. So I think there was an element of that, but to get him in the third round, to be able to sit there and
yeah,
essentially redshirt for year 1 and learn, like this is a franchise that doesn't have a built-in like, yeah, we've got a Lamar Jackson, a Joe Burrow, a Pat Mahomes, like I think Milroe's going to be getting a little bit of run sooner rather than later here. Probably isn't
yeah,
this season. I think in a perfect world, he sits like the full season, but I think he's coming into training camp next year, like barring an off-season signing, as like coin flip. Is he going to be the starter in year 1? Especially if he kind of shows the things that he was doing when he was the starter at Alabama and Nick Saban was raving about him on the broadcast, and I can't believe he's still here. And blah, blah. It's like, yeah, well, we get it. You're sticking up for your guys here. Saban hasn't exactly transitioned to that unbiased kind of commentator quite yet. You can see him perk up when they talk about the SEC, but
yeah,
Big Ten rolls around and he kind of goes into a coma for a little bit. But even besides that, right? Offensive line was a huge, huge need. And right, like Gray Zabel is not going to be a household name that a lot of people probably knew a whole heck of a lot about coming out of good old North Dakota State there. And so he's someone that is going to be a plug and play day 1 starter, and I love the feature on it. They're always doing the okay, here's what so and so is up to, and it's oh, he's a burgeoning, he likes music, and oh, he's done this and he can play this musical instrument or whatever. He's like, I rented some land and I started a corn farm this past summer, and it's like that is what I want out of my offensive lineman. If I have ever heard an analogy before, sign me up for that. Just clone this guy and give me multiple versions of him. Because again, right, you want to talk about a quarterback's best friend. It's the big boys up in front of him that are keeping him upright there.
yeah. And to your point, Seattle did have a very good draft, and one of the biggest reasons why I think people are very high in what they did. I think their first 7 picks that they made were all guys in the top 99% of their athletic score at their position.
Yeah.
So you don't see that very often. And again, when in doubt, just put a good athlete out there. You can show them what to do later.
Yeah.
And I like that mentality because Seattle's kind of been known for we want to get these big muscular, we want to get these big um, like road graders in at every position. Well, the NFL is getting faster, right? You have to adapt to that. So by bringing in guys who can compete from an athletic standpoint, you're giving yourself a better position to win. So I agree with you. Seattle did have a very good draft.
What was most shocking about it to me though is when you've got like a defensive head coach like Mike McDonald, out of all the picks that they took, only two on
Yeah,
defense. So they clearly, to your point there, prioritized offensive line and let's get a little bit more depth here at our skill positions, which is what you
yeah,
want to see.
yeah.
Flip side of the coin here. Who did you hate?
You know what? I was looking through this again today because overall, I didn't really hate many drafts. There's only two that I can come up with.
I had two as well too, so I'm
Yeah,
interested to see if we matched up here.
yeah. So the first one, and again, not because of the division rival, but the Cincinnati Bengals.
There's one.
Yeah, I'm looking at what they're doing, and like the notes that I just have, like the best player they drafted was in the fourth round, Barrett Carter out of Clemson. That guy's a hell of a ball player. I actually am very, very shocked he was still there in the fourth. But I talked a little bit about it with Tennessee and Cam Ward and their development. When I look at Cincinnati's coaching staff, I don't see their ability to develop guys who aren't already stars coming out of college. Yeah, the Joe Burrows are going to be successful whenever he gets a chance to go to the NFL. Jamar Chase is going to go anywhere and be successful. T. Higgins is going to be successful. Like those are guys who are going to be good. When you look at the defensive side, and regardless of who the new defensive, it's Al Golden, who was at Notre Dame and obviously was one of the what was he the defensive coordinator for? Was it Notre Dame last year? That he was defensive coordinator for?
Something like
Um, yeah. So I mean, the guy was the head coach at Temple. He's a career college guy, and he's coming in to run the defense from Lou Anarumo, who they let go of this past offseason. But Cincinnati's defense needed a lot of help. When you need a lot of help and you typically don't have a good track record of developing players, drafting projects is not at the highest the highest priority for that. So when you look
also
at
never
their
good
first,
when you leave a team, go to college, and come back to the same team as well too,
yeah,
because that's exactly
no,
what he did as well. So
yeah,
just we're
exactly,
in the retread specials here for the
yeah,
NFL coaching ranks.
yeah, and I mean you look at their first two picks, you know, project defensive lineman, project linebacker. Not saying they're bad players. I just don't see them being ready to go out of the gate in year one, which is what you need for Cincinnati because their offense is ready to compete for a Super Bowl right now. You cannot do this when you want to compete. You don't take projects. You take guys who are going to come in and compete and help you from day one. And I don't see the coaching staff in place there that's going to put these guys in a good position to develop as quickly as they should. And we're even taking out the Trey Hendrickson negotiation right now because who knows where that's going to go, right? So you might be down your best defensive player. You've already lost a couple of guys to retirement and free agency. Now you're trying to build this thing back up, and you're going to, take two projects in the first two rounds to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing there.
Well, and that's just it because the as a Steelers fan, I'm sure you're acutely aware of this. The Bengals fan base isn't exactly a quiet, reserved one. There, like they usually, if they're thrilled about things, it's just who day this, who day that, and they're screaming from the rooftops. It's been silent from the Bengals fan base in the days after that draft. And I think that goes to kind of show you exactly what a lot of even the fans' sentiment around this draft class is. Like, I always love, even in the first round, where it's like household names where you should probably know who these people are. Like, they'll zoom in on whatever Lions guy or Packerhead guy, and then they'll announce it, and then they'll look around. Yeah, we know who that is, right? So but I feel like that was every one of their picks this year. Where if you ask, a Bengals fan or even some of the scouts around the NFL, where again they always do the anonymous, surveys afterwards, like kind of the consensus was it wasn't bad, but even the most rose-colored glasses of responses was like, yeah, it was all right. So,
Yeah,
like, if your ceiling is a C plus, and you and I are
yeah,
both saying like we really weren't impressed with them either, like again, I don't think they whiffed on any players, but there were just a lot of like, was that really the person you had highest on your board, whether it was best available or drafting by need? Like, it was just a bizarre draft overall, I felt from them.
yeah. And again, we don't have to beat a dead horse here, but when you have a huge need and the draft is deep at the position that you are drafting at, you don't need to reach for somebody who potentially has some ability to do it 5 years from now,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know. I mean, you look at certain ways that people view prospects, and we mentioned it several times. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Maybe they think they can get the most out of Shamar Stewart, and maybe they think they could turn that 4.5 career college sacks into 140 career NFL sacks. Who knows?
Be pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good turnaround.
Pretty good
Um,
return on investment.
yeah. All right. So we're 1 for 1. Because you had
Here.
Cincinnati as
Why don't
well.
I go first this time,
Sure.
just so the viewers don't think that we're just cahooting here and just, oh yeah,
Sure.
I had that too there. All right,
Yeah.
so my other draft again, where I really don't think there was an NFL franchise who you can assign like an F to, but there were
No.
definitely some, D plus C minuses out there where it's like, okay, it got squirrely at times, and I think the New Orleans Saints had a good first round, right? Like I like Calvin Banks Jr. out of Texas there, and definitely addresses a need, especially with the fact that they've got some injuries along that offensive line, and people are retiring, and so they've definitely got some holes to fill. From there, though, I don't see a ton of bright spots. Like again, this is one of those things where, like you said at the very top of the show, we're talking about Shadur. People were kind of saying like, "Oh, Cleveland, oh, New Orleans, potential landing spots for them, QB needy teams, and all that." And then you go and it's like, "All right, we're going with Tyler Shaw from Louisville here." Again, not a bad pick, but at 40 overall, like he was really the top of your remaining QBs draft board. So I don't really see where they're going there. I don't even think they really know where they're going, but more so than just the picks, which like I'll hand it over to you if you've got any different thoughts on them in a second. But this is a team that is in salary cap hell. They need more than anyone else. The Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs of the world, if they went out there and they kind of whiffed on a few, they're going to be all right. They're still going to have a winning season. Like the New Orleans Saints need to absolutely nail these drafts for these rookie scale contracts so that they can start shipping off some of these aging veterans and just cutting people, and I'm sure they're counting down the days until Derek Carr comes off the books. And so they have so many holes to fix, and this is also a franchise that has literally just been stuck in neutral. Like they are the definition of, we are going to go out there and we'll be frisky to go 7-9 every year, or I guess now 7-10, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it's they just don't seem to have a direction. Like if you were to say, what is the New Orleans Saints identity? You knew what it was when they were under Drew Brees and Sean Payton. Now it's not special teams, it's not defense, it's not offense, it's not we've got these all-star wide receivers, we just need a quarterback. Like they've just got so many needs, and it feels like they're just throwing darts, and the darts
Uh,
aren't hitting the targets that they're throwing at.
yeah. So we're 2 for 2 because my second team is New Orleans as well.
Hey, look at us
And
go here.
I honestly don't need to go into too much depth here because you said pretty much exactly verbatim what my notes were going to say. Love the Kelvin Banks pick. I thought he could have fit with any roster in the NFL. And New Orleans obviously just lost Ryan Ramczyk. That's a very, very easy transition to put Kelvin Banks on the left side and then move Thalias Fuaga over back to the right side, and then you've got your bookend tackles for the next 10 years.
Those darn knees, eh? You know nothing about knee trouble.
I know nothing about knee trouble, but yeah, and I mean it makes up for the Trevor Penning whiff that you had 3 years ago, which I mean check the receipts. I was very low on Trevor Penning coming out of the draft. I didn't think he was going to amount to anything, and he's proven me right so far. Um, but going to where New Orleans is, my note is exactly what you just mentioned. They've done this to themselves by putting themselves in such salary cap hell that they have to nail every position that they draft. And if they don't contribute in year one, then it's back to the drawing board next year. And that's a very precarious position to be in. Like Mickey Loomis, he's got some type of intel on the ownership group of New Orleans because what he's done to that franchise since Drew Brees has gone is criminal. Honestly, it has. You can't put yourself in a position where you're negative 79 million over the cap every year. Like you can't compete that way. Like how do you operate? And when you have quarterbacks in your disposal because we have to pick one because again, we back ourselves into this corner where Derek Carr, his shoulder's not good. He's probably going to be out for this year. We can't go sign anybody worth a lot of money because we don't have the money
Which
to do
again,
so.
let's put a pin in this right here now. How much are you buying that it's a true, like, I medically could not, if my life depended on it, throw a football versus go sit on an island over there. We want nothing to do with you. We'll mail you your checks, just we're done with this experience.
Well, he just came out today and said I've got the MRI reports that validate my injury statement. So we'll take him at face value.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
I'll take it at face value too. There, I've got 10%, aluminum foil hat going on right now
yeah,
for
there you go.
conspiracy theory, though.
There you go. So out of the picks that they made, Kelvin Banks Jr. and I like Danny Stutzman, linebacker at Oklahoma. I think that he's a good downhill run stopping defender. Can rush the passer a little bit. You can line him up a little bit on the defensive line. I like that pick. But again, the rest of the draft, I don't know what they're doing. Is Tyler Shugg really going to be a better quarterback prospect than Spencer Rattler or Jake Hayner? I don't think so. He's going to be older than the two of them as well when he takes the field in his rookie year. So why are you taking a 26-year-old project quarterback to be your potential replacement for Derek Carr when you already have two project quarterbacks on your roster already? Like I don't see how you're going to make them better by having this person come in because it's not like Tyler Shugg blew the roof off when he was at Oregon. It's not like he's blown the roof off at Louisville. He's just been a ho hum prospect the entirety of his NCAA career. So New Orleans is just in a position that they've done to themselves. They put it where they have to have draft picks contribute in year one, and it's a very very tough position to be in because you need to be the best drafting team out there if you're going to be doing that. And New Orleans has shown that they are absolutely not at that level.
Yeah. And again, throw the first round pick out the window here
That's
because
an F.
because again, right? Like even going back to Shadur here, even if you didn't have him on a first round grade, they had five more picks that they could have made at a position of need. And they came up with Tyler, Vernon Broughton, Jonas Sanker, Danny Stutzman, and Quincy Riley.
Yeah,
Like again, you can't sit there, and this is coming from someone who is not a Shadur fan, but you can't sit there and tell me that at a position of need, that was the best course of action, right?
yeah,
Even if Goodell sent out the memo and went, screw Dion. Like
yeah,
we're gonna blackball them here. Shadur's not going in the first round, second round. Like he's a
yeah,
day 3 pick here.
yeah.
Great.
Take
Top of
take
my
Milrow.
draft board on day 3.
Yeah, take Milrow.
Yeah. All sorts of options. So they're wild. But